Today in class we're going to talk about polymers. The last couple classes we've been talking about hydrocarbons, and hopefully at this point you're able to draw the three different forms of hydrocarbons: alkanes, alkenes, and alkynes, and hopefully you know the different structure names, whether it's straight chain, branch chain, or carbon ring. If you're still unsure about any of these topics, please come talk to me. Today, when we talk about polymers, we're going to build on this knowledge of hydrocarbons. We're going to talk about how hydrocarbons are used to create these new materials that we use every single day called polymers. What is a polymer? Anytime we have a vocab word, we like to look at the word itself and see if there's any roots in the word to help us remember it. For poly means many. Think about a polygon in math class has many sides. Mer actually means parts. So if we were going to define polymer, we could talk about it's something that has many parts. Its actual definition in science is a long molecule made up of lots of small molecules put together. But what are these small molecules called? Small molecules are called a monomer. Remember that the prefix mono means one. If we had a paperclip chain, and we call this paperclip chain a polymer, right, many parts put together, each individual part, each individual paperclip in that chain would be considered the monomer. If we were going to use the analogy of Legos, which would be the monomer and which would be the polymer? Think about it right now. Which is the monomer, the pieces, which is the overall new structure, the polymer? I know you're thinking really hard right now. If you said that the Lego blocks was the monomer, and when we put those Lego blocks together, you create some sort of tower like these little boys in this picture are doing, that creates the polymer, you would be right. Monomer is the small part. Polymer is the big overall picture put together. One of the skills we're going to have moving forward, and this is a question that you will see again on your test, very similar to this, is being able to match the monomers to the polymers. So our column on the left, column A through E, are all examples of monomers, of parts. And the column on the right, 1 through 5, are all examples of polymers, the long chains that are created from these tiny little parts. Right now in your paper, try to match the monomers in column on the left to the polymers in the column on the right. I'm going to give you a couple seconds to try to do this right now, and then we'll go over our answers. All right, let's check what you got. Monomer A is this yellow, interesting shape. And if you said it matched with 5, you would totally be correct. Notice how A is one tiny piece in that repeating chain of 5. B has these nice green circles, and it matches with polymer 3. These green circles are linked together, creating a repeating pattern or a repeating chain. C has 2 white circles and 1 black circle. And notice how in 2 that this pattern of a monomer is linked together to make a long chain of a polymer. And at D, hopefully you recognize a piece of a hydrocarbon here. 1 carbon bonded to 2 hydrogen. And monomer D matches with our polymer 1, which is this nice long hydrocarbon chain. And that leaves us, by process elimination, E. is actually an example of a carbon ring. It is a sugar that can be found in your body, and that tiny part, that monomer, links together with other carbon rings that look just like it to form a polymer. Polymers can be classified in a couple based on their structure, just like we learned hydrocarbons can. You're going to notice some of these names are going to be very similar to our hydrocarbon classifications. First, we have a linear polymer. This is a straight line, just like our hydrocarbon that has the straight chain. Polymers can be linear, just one long line of carbon atoms connecting together. These tend to be weaker because they don't have as many bonds. Next, just like hydrocarbon structure, we have a branched polymer. Remember that a branched polymer, just like a branched chain of a hydrocarbon, has chains breaking off and forming like branches on a tree. If you'll notice in the pictures here, we have a long line that looks very much like a linear line and then branching off from it, just like a tree has branches, are these tiny little chains. Here you have a long line and branching off. Okay, these are examples of branched polymers. These tend to be stronger because there's a little bit more connection between. But the absolute most strongest is the cross-linked. In cross-linked, you have short chains connected to long chains. If we follow the chains over here, we've got a long linear chain here. We have a long linear chain here, and there's these tiny connections between them. These tiny connections make a cross-linked polymer the strongest of our three types, but also makes it the least flexible, because with all these little connections, it can't bend as much as the other ones that have less little connections between the polymer chains. Okay, properties of polymers. Just like in hydrocarbons, the property itself of the polymer depends on the type of monomer and the number of monomers. So a monomer are the basic building blocks of the polymers. Adding monomers together creates a polymer. So each student here is a monomer. They're coming together to make a polymer. Now we have two separate polymer chains. Cross-linking a polymer makes it stronger but less flexible, so they're going to demonstrate cross-linking. You have two long chains connecting by short chain. Polymer now becomes more rigid or strong, less flexible. This is plasticizing, which makes it more flexible. They're showing us right now how much more flexible it becomes and how it becomes flexible, because these two chains can just rub against each other and slide past. We have two categories of polymers. We have synthetic, where synthetic means man-made. PVC, like PVC piping. Polyethylene, this is plastics. All plastics are polymers. You use plastics every single day. If you're writing with a pen or a mechanical pencil, you are using polymers right now, you're using plastic. Rubber, there's natural and there's man-made rubber. Most of the rubber that we know, so such as the rubber in tires, is actually synthetic or man-made. And nylon is synthetic. Fleece is an example of synthetic polymer. All of these are man-made. We make them in a factory. And finally, we have natural. That means they're made by plants or animals. These are things you're going to study next year in biology class, whether it's DNA, chitin, which is the hard shell on things like beetles, and cellulose, which is the thing that gives plants its structure. It's the reason why celery has those long little strings in it. Those are all examples of cellulose. So at this point, you should be able to explain the difference between a monomer and a polymer and identify the monomer in a polymer chain. You should be able to identify the three types of polymers, whether it's linear, branch chain, or cross-linked. And you should be able to say the difference between synthetic polymers and natural polymers. We're going to talk more about our different types of synthetic polymers and natural polymers in the next couple days.